This is the IELTS listening test. You will hear a number of different recordings, and you will have to answer questions on what you hear. There will be time for you to read the instructions and questions, and you will have a chance to check your work. All the recordings will be played once only. The test is in 4 parts. At the end of the test, you will be given 10 minutes to transfer your answers to the answer sheet. Now turn to Part 1. Part 1.
You will hear a telephone conversation between a woman and the secretary of a cycling club.
First, you have some time to look at questions 1 to 4. You should answer the questions as you listen, because you will not hear the recording a second time. Listen carefully to the first part of the conversation and answer questions 1 to 4.
Cuxford Cycle Club?
Oh, yes, hello. I'm calling to inquire about joining the club.
Fine. What would you like to know?
Well, I wanted to get a picture of what the club is like. For example, how big it is.
Now, that changes each year, of course. Cycling is growing in popularity.
I'm sure.
So, last year we had nearly 70 members, which was a record in itself. But this year, there are 76 people on the list, and I'd say at least 60 of them come to events regularly. I should think something like 85 is a likely figure by next year.
That's bigger than I expected.
Yes, there are plenty of opportunities to meet people.
And how much does it cost to join?
It depends. £40 is for standard members, and there are reductions for certain categories. For example, veteran and youth members pay £10 less, £30. And family membership works out at £25 per head. All those charges are per year.
And youth means?
Under 18.
Oh, that covers me, at least at the moment.
Then for safety reasons, your application will need to be endorsed, so your teacher or parent needs to sign your form.
No problem. So what happens after I've sent the form in to you?
We deal with it and get a confirmation of acceptance with a membership card out to you in 3 weeks. And then you're ready to ride. It lasts a year, and we send you a renewal 1 month before it's due to expire.
OK.
Before you hear the next part of the conversation, you have some time to look at questions 5 to 10. Now listen and answer questions 5 to 10.
And can you tell me something about the activities you do?
Yes, there's a range of things to reflect the varied membership. There are the family rides, which are pretty popular, held every month, and that might get increased to every 2 weeks.
I don't know if that's really for me.
You might prefer the Saturday rides, which are more popular with the youth members. We don't go huge distances, 100 kilometres or anything like that. 60 kilometres is about average, but the pace is fairly brisk.
Let's hope I'll be able to keep up.
Oh, actually, there's something I should have mentioned before. We've got to be sure everyone's bike is roadworthy, so you'll need to have your bike checked and obtain a safety certificate for it. Most bike shops will do that for you.
Fine. Do you do any longer tours, like holidays?
Yes, there's a camping tour at least twice a year. There's one on July the 14th, though it'll get booked up very soon. If you miss that, then there's another on August the 17th.
Oh, good.
But obviously, there's plenty going on before then. You might want to come along on May the 5th. Your membership should be through by then, and that's when we have a picnic. Everyone brings some food to share, and we go out to the hills and eat there.
That sounds fun. I'm going to fill in my form as soon as I get off the phone.
And a further benefit of membership is the discount with wheels.
The shop on Mill Road?
Yes, the manager's a member of the club, and he'll give you a 15% reduction. It means membership can pay for itself.
Great. Well, you'll be getting my form soon.
Good. I look forward to meeting you.
That is the end of Part 1. You now have 1 minute to check your answers to Part 1. Part 2.
You will hear a talk given to a group of international students about banking. First, you have some time to look at questions 11 to 17. Now, listen carefully and answer questions 11 to 17.
Hello! Wow! Nice to see all you international students here today. Thanks for coming. I'm Penny from Finance. I wasn't expecting so many. They told me 30, but there must be at least 50. Anyway, for many, if not most of you, this is your first time in Australia. You may find our banking system similar to yours. Anyway, if you have any questions, could you leave them till the end? Okay then. Well, step one for most international students is to open an account. Some of you have brought cash over from your country, and having worked with international student accounts for many years, I can tell you that the money often goes missing. Even if only for safety's sake, open a bank account. It's the safest place to put your money. Now, in Australia, we have 4 main banks, and lucky for you, all 4 are within walking distance of the school. First off, in Scarborough Street, we have the United Global Bank, or UGB as we call it. Next, we have the International Bank. When you walk into Pacific Plaza, you can't miss the big red sign on your right. The Pacific Bank is located in Key Plaza, just 100 metres down the street, and Town Bank, another international bank, is in Southport Park. Now, one of my jobs in student services is to locate the best bank accounts for our students from the neighbouring banks. I am happy to say that the banks in this area are quite competitive, and I've managed to locate 3 excellent accounts with various pros and cons. The first 2 are from the UGB. Firstly, the EasySaver account is very popular among international students. The reason for this is the low fees and the 10 ATM withdrawals per month. The other account that does well is the Quick Saver. The main reason for this is because once you open an account, there are no fees for the first 6 months. No one wants to pay fees, right? Now, the International Bank has what they call a student savings account. This account has been quite successful among our international students as well, especially for those who need a checking facility. The account offers a checkbook at no additional cost to you. The last of the popular student accounts is a study account, which is offered by Pacific Bank. The main advantage with this one is that the account can be linked to a credit card, which can also be helpful for students.
Before you listen to the rest of the presentation, you have some time to look at questions 18 to 20. Now listen carefully and answer questions 18 to 20.
A lot of people, when they go to a bank to open an account, take with them all sorts of documents. I've seen some students take restaurant bill statements, rental agreements, even video rental cards. Well, these are not suitable for opening a bank account. When it comes to opening an account, just remember the 100-point system. Some items get higher points than others, but basically you can't go wrong with your passport as the primary form of identification. I think that's worth 75 points. Some students have a driver's license. This is a good secondary form of identification, and it's worth 30 points. Another one that works well is a phone bill with your address on it. Any of these items will easily get you the 100 points needed to open an account. Okay, that finishes my part of the lecture.
That is the end of Part 2. You now have 30 seconds to check your answers to Part 2. Part 3.
You will hear a university professor giving information about student assessments. First, you have some time to look at questions 21 to 25. Now listen and answer questions 21 to 25.
Okay, I'd like to take a moment now to talk about the assessment requirements for this semester. Firstly, as you can clearly see on your handout, there are 4 assessments this semester: an oral report, an essay and 2 exams. They're weighted 20% each for the oral report and the essay, and the remaining 60%, as you can see, is divided equally between the 2 exams. Yes, John?
Yes, Dr. Thomas. Regarding the oral report, can we present this with a partner, or must it be handled individually?
In the past, oral reports have been researched and presented in small groups of 2 or 3, but this year we've decided to try them singly and see how they go. We're certainly not locked into any one way. All we do ask is that you use PowerPoint for your presentations. The university has all the equipment you will need to deliver the presentation. Further details can be found at the library. Yes, young lady at the back.
I noticed that there's no word limit given on the essay. Can you give us some more details about that?
Actually, the limit is listed. It just happens to be on the next page. A technical problem with the printing. Now, you'll be pleased to hear that we've reduced the word count on the essay from last year. Before, it was 2,000. Now, it's 1,500. So that gives you some more time for your oral report. Right?
Can you give us any indication of the topics that will be available?
Not at the moment.
None at all? I'd like to make an early start on it if I can.
I'll have them ready by the next lecture. I can say that they will all be to do with the unit studied, so if you consult your course readings, you'll be able to get a general idea.
Before you listen to the rest of the discussion, you have some time to have a look at questions 26 to 30. Now listen carefully and answer questions 26 to 30.
Now, I'd like to give you an idea about the dates for these pieces of assessment. In late June, the oral reports will be due. On the 21st of the following month, the essay will be due. Mid-semester and end-of-semester exams will be given. I'm not sure of the exact dates for those, but they will be during the standard exam weeks in July and September. I'll have more information about the exact date during those weeks by next Tuesday. The oral reports can often take up quite a bit of time. Please make sure you stick to the time limit. Most of you should go no longer than 15 minutes. Any more than 20 and you'll be penalised, and no one wants that, do they? So, keep within the time limit, please.
Excuse me, Dr. Thomas. I'm not very good with typing on the computer. Are we able to submit essays or reports which are handwritten?
The short answer to that is no. My best advice to you is to make it a goal to learn to type. In this electronic age, it's a skill that all people must have, and I really believe it's in your best interest to learn. I believe there's a typing class held here at the university in the early evenings, Monday to Friday. If that doesn't suit, a computer-based typing program is good. The computer lab is open late on Monday, Tuesday and Thursday, I believe. I think you can even come in on weekends. Saturday nights and all day Sunday they're open. Failing that, I suppose you could pay someone, but it could become quite expensive. Now, I'd like to briefly discuss the exams for this semester. I'm a believer that if you are prepared to work hard, that means complete all homework tasks, be up to date with the readings and participate in lectures, you'll achieve your learning goals and pass this course. The exam questions are a combination of tasks assigned outside class time, as well as, of course, the information we cover here in class. Well, I think that just about does it for the assessment overview. Are there any other questions?
That is the end of Part 3. You now have 30 seconds to check your answers to Part 3. Part 4.
You will hear part of a lecture about the early history of cinema. First, you have some time to look at questions 31 to 40. Now listen to the lecture and answer questions 31 to 40.
Now, we all take the wonders of the cinema very much for granted these days, but cinema really is a very recent phenomenon. It has moved from its origins in the simple still camera to the dazzling computer-generated graphics of today in little over 100 years. Perhaps the real beginning of cinema was the cinematograph, a moving camera invented by the Lumiere brothers. As the excitement at the early screenings of short, simple moving pictures spread, competition developed rapidly, and soon cameras such as the American Biograph were on the market. Advertisements asserted that the Biograph did not shake as much as the cinematograph. Meanwhile, permits were required for outside filming, and import licenses were difficult to obtain for equipment, and there were other difficulties for cameramen. When the Lumiere brothers went to film the crowning of Tsar Nicholas II in Russia in 1896, the camera's ticking noise led people to believe it was a bomb. Although this confusion was resolved, disaster struck at the ceremony when a stand of spectators collapsed and the huge crowd panicked. The cameramen kept filming. It was the first time such events had been filmed, and this marked the beginning of a new concept of journalism. Well, the technology continued to develop rapidly, and often secretly. The thrill of invention and the prospect of riches to be made drove experimenters along. But historians of cinema faced difficulties in establishing if an apparatus functioned in the way that its makers asserted. Everyone was keen to say that their machine was the best, of course. In some cases, however, we do have reliable records or evidence in the equipment itself, and then we can see the details of the evolution of the technology. By about 1890, for example, the Frenchman Marais had arrived at results of startling clarity in sequential images. He also had the idea of recording images on a long strip of paper that unrolled in front of the lens instead of on separate plates, but he found it impossible initially to ensure that this strip would have regular movement. As we step into the 20th century, however, we see much progress has been made, and there are many examples of what we would today recognise as films. Questions of the art form were now as important as questions of what was technologically possible, and filmmakers searched around for ideas to draw on. Comic strips were very popular at the time in newspapers, and their structure was applied to the planning of films, which were now being mapped in a series of picture panels. Different innovations were achieved by different types of filmmaker, with a certain amount of rivalry between makers of documentaries and makers of fiction films. One area where documentaries led the way was in the use of travelling shots, although of course fiction films adopted this technique in due course. Various sources for stories were developing, and each would have an impact on the way the story was filmed. For example, filmmakers started to use greater numbers of shots when chase films became popular, because they wanted to show the various stages of the policeman running after the bandit and so on. And it wasn't just different kinds of story that were driving filmmakers to think up new techniques. Other technology also played its part. The telephone was growing in use, and filmmakers came up with the idea of splitting the screen image into two parts to show telephone conversations. All this growing sophistication in the shooting of films began to make the whole process of creating them more challenging. The very first films consisted of single shots and were straightforward to take from shooting to showing them to audiences. However, as the filming developed into multiple shots, then editing emerged as an essential ingredient of the process. Cinema was growing up. Well, next I'd like to turn your attention to some of the issues that I believe were...
That is the end of Part 4. You now have 1 minute to check your answers to Part 4. That is the end of the listening test. In the IELTS test, you would now have 10 minutes to transfer your answers to the answer sheet.